The Galactic Council chamber stretched out, like a massive dome, filled with hundreds of different alien species. Ambassador Kang Tae sat in the small human section, his back straight and his face calm. He had been doing this job for 15 years now, and he knew how these meetings went. The other ambassadors would talk, argue, and make decisions. Then they would ignore whatever humans had to say. Today was no different. A trade proposal came up, one that would allow human merchant ships to use the faster routes through the Outer Rim. Tae stood and presented the facts. Human ships paid their fees. They followed every rule. They caused no trouble. The proposal was fair and would benefit everyone. The Vrexian ambassador, a tall creature with gray scales and 4 arms, laughed loudly. "The humans speak of fairness," he said to the chamber. "How amusing. A species that only learned to cross space 200 years ago thinks they deserve the same rights as civilizations that have sailed the stars for millennia." Other ambassadors joined in the laughter. Tae sat down and made notes on his datapad. He would file a formal complaint. Nothing would happen, just like the last 500 complaints he had filed. But he would do it anyway because that was the job. Far from the council chambers, Captain Li Huan stood on the bridge of the cargo ship Sunrise Herald. His vessel carried grain and medical supplies to the colonies in the outer territories. It was honest work, and Huan took pride in running a tight ship. His navigator, Park Yuna, checked their course, while engineer Choi Dae monitored the engines from below. "Contact ahead," Yuna said, her voice steady. "Vrexian patrol ship." Huan nodded. This happened at least once per trip. The Vrexians would stop them, search the cargo, maybe take some of it. They would claim it was for inspection or security. There was nothing Huan could do about it. The Vrexian ship pulled alongside. Huan opened communications and provided all their documents. Everything was in order, as always. The Vrexian captain smiled with too many teeth and ordered his soldiers to board. Dae came up from the engine room, his jaw tight. "Captain, we should fight back. We have defensive weapons." "Stand down," Huan said quietly. "We follow protocol." The Vrexian soldiers tore through their cargo hold. They destroyed containers, scattered grain across the floor, and broke open medical supplies. When they left, half of the shipment was ruined. The Vrexian captain's laugh echoed through the communication channel before he cut the connection. Yuna's hand shook as she filed the incident report. "How long?" she asked. "How long do we keep taking this?" Huan had no answer. He just set course for their destination, knowing the colonists who needed that grain would go hungry this month. On Earth, in the government center, Premier Han Su reviewed reports in her office. General Kim Jin stood nearby, his military uniform crisp and his expression hard. He had been pushing for action for years, and every day his patience wore thinner. "Another 12 incidents this month," Jin said, pointing at the screen. 3 cargo ships harassed. 1 research station vandalized. 2 colonists injured in what the local authorities called an accident. He paused. "We both know it was not an accident." Sue rubbed her eyes. She had not slept well in months. "What do you want me to do, General? Start a war? We are one species among thousands. The Council has made it clear where we stand. The Council thinks we are weak. Maybe we are," Sue said tiredly. "Our fleet is small. Our colonies are scattered. If we fight, we might lose everything. And if we do not fight, we lose it slowly, piece by piece," Jin replied. "Every day they test us. Every day they push further. When does it end?" Sue looked out the window at the city below. Millions of people going about their lives, unaware of the constant insults their species endured among the stars. "I will not be the premier who leads humanity into a war we cannot win," she said. "We will exhaust every peaceful option first." Jin said nothing more. He had heard this speech before. In the council chamber, Ambassador Tae attended another session. Today they were discussing military exercises near human space. The Vrexian Empire wanted to conduct war games right next to 3 human colonies. Tae objected, citing the obvious danger to civilian populations. Admiral Vrektal, the Vrexian military commander, stood up. His scales glittered under the chamber lights. "The humans fear everything," he announced to the gathered ambassadors. "Your infinite patience is just another word for cowardice. Perhaps if you had any courage, any strength, you would be worth taking seriously." The chamber filled with clicking, buzzing, and whistling that passed for laughter among the various species. Tay kept his face blank. He had learned long ago not to show anger. It only made things worse. After the session ended, Tay walked through the corridors alone. He passed groups of other ambassadors who stopped talking when he approached, then resumed once he passed. He was used to it. Humans were the joke of the galaxy, the species that endured anything without fighting back. That night, Tay sent his daily report to Earth. He detailed the insults, the mockery, the casual cruelty. He recommended continuing diplomatic efforts. Then he sat in his quarters and allowed himself 5 minutes to feel the anger he could never show in public. Just 5 minutes. Then he locked it away again. Across human space, millions of people went about their lives. They worked, loved, built, and dreamed. They knew their government dealt with difficulties among the stars, but most did not know the full extent of it. Most did not know how much their ambassadors endured, how many insults their captains swallowed, how many times their leaders chose peace over pride. Humanity had been patient for 200 years. They had filed complaints, followed rules, and turned the other cheek. They believed that eventually, the galaxy would see their worth. They believed that peace was always better than war. They believed that patience would be rewarded. They were wrong. But they did not know it yet. The lesson was coming, taught by those who mistook patience for weakness and kindness for fear. And when it came, the galaxy would learn what happens when you push peaceful people too far. The colony on Terran 4 was not large, just 50,000 people trying to build a life on a distant world. They grew crops in vast greenhouses and raised their children under a yellow sun. Colony Director Song Hai had been there since the beginning, watching the settlement grow from a few dozen prefab buildings to a real town with schools and parks. The warning came from their orbital sensors. A solar flare was building, bigger than anything they had seen before. Hai immediately called an emergency meeting with her staff. The radiation would be deadly. Their shields could not handle it. They had maybe 6 hours. "Can we evacuate underground?" someone asked. "The shelters can hold maybe 3,000 people," he answered. "We need ships. We need to get people off-world." They sent out distress calls on every frequency, emergency signals that any ship in range was required to answer. The law was clear about this. All spacefaring species had agreed that distress calls must be answered, no matter who sent them. One ship responded. A Vrexian cruiser, the Fist of Vrek, was only 2 hours away. Hai felt relief flood through her. They would be saved. Commander Vex's call of the Fist of Vrek received the human distress call and smiled. He had been bored lately. This could be entertaining. He ordered his communications officer to broadcast the distress call across the Vrexian military network. "Place your bets," Vexcal announced to his crew. "How many humans will die?" "I say 30,000. His officers laughed and made their own guesses. They positioned the ship in orbit above the colony and watched. The flare was growing, a massive wave of radiation that would scorch the planet's surface. Below, they could see humans running, trying to get to shelters, trying to save their children. "Sir, they are calling us again," the communications officer said. "Begging for help. Put it on speakers," Vexcal said. "I want everyone to hear this." The voice of Songhai filled the bridge. She was crying now, pleading. "Please. We have children here. Thousands of children. Please help us." The Vrexian crew howled with laughter. This was the best entertainment they had had in months. They took bets on which section of the colony would be hit first. They zoomed in their cameras to watch humans desperately trying to save each other. 3 systems away, Captain Yun Wu of the patrol ship Defiant picked up the emergency broadcast. He heard Hai's voice. He heard the Vrexian laughter in the background. His hands tightened on the command chair. "Navigator, plot the fastest course to Terran 4, he said, his voice cold. "Captain, we are 3 systems away. Even at maximum speed, we will not make it in time," the navigator replied. "Then we go beyond maximum speed." "Engineering? I need everything you can give me." In the engine room, Engineer Co. Rin looked at her displays. What the captain was asking for would destroy the ship. The reactor would overheat. The engines would burn out. They might not even survive the trip. "Captain, if we push this hard, the reactor will melt down," she reported. "Noted," Wu said. "Do it anyway." Rin looked at her crew, young men and women who had signed up to patrol and protect. Now their captain was asking them to possibly die to save strangers. But none of them hesitated. They began pushing the engines past every safety limit. The Defiant screamed through space at speeds it was never designed for. Alarms blared throughout the ship. The hull groaned under the stress. Rin manually shut down every non-essential system, routing all power to the engines and shields. She could smell burning metal and overheating circuits. On Terran 4, the flare was minutes away. Hai had managed to get 3,000 people into the underground shelters. But 47,000 remained above ground. She stood with them in the colony square, holding the hands of 2 small children whose parents were already safe below. If she was going to die, she would die with her people. The first wave of radiation hit the upper atmosphere. People screamed and tried to run, but there was nowhere to go. Then, something appeared in the sky, a ship, moving impossibly fast, positioning itself between the colony and the sun. The Defiant took the full force of the solar flare. Its shields lit up like a star, absorbing radiation that would have killed everyone below. The ship shuddered and sparked, but it held. "All personnel, emergency evacuation protocol," Wu ordered. "Beam down to the surface. Start getting people to the underground shelters. We bought them some time." The crew transported down in their protective suits. They grabbed children, carried the elderly, guided the panicked toward safety. Rin stayed on the ship, one hand on the reactor controls, manually venting plasma to keep the systems from exploding. Sweat poured down her face. The heat was incredible. The second wave of the flare hit. The Defiant's shields failed in 3 sections. Radiation flooded into those areas. Rin sealed them off, sacrificing parts of the ship to save the rest. The reactor temperature climbed into the red zone. "Captain, I cannot hold this much longer," she reported. "Just a few more minutes," Wu replied from the surface. "We are almost done." Hai and her people worked alongside the Defiant's crew. They got everyone into the shelters, sealing the doors just as the third wave hit. The Defiant absorbed it all, its hull now glowing red-hot in places. Finally, Wu and his crew transported back aboard. "Engineering, get us out of here," he ordered. Rin tried to engage the engines. Nothing happened. The reactor was dying, barely keeping life support running. "Sir, we have no propulsion. We are drifting." The ship limped away from Terran 4 on momentum alone. Behind them, the colony was safe. 47,000 people lived because one human ship had pushed beyond its limits. On the Vrexian cruiser, Commander Vexakel stared in disbelief. The humans had arrived. They had saved the colony. His entertainment was ruined. In a fit of anger, he broadcast everything: the distress calls, his crew's laughter, their bets on human deaths. He sent it all to his superiors, bragging about the fun they had had. That broadcast was intercepted by human intelligence. Within an hour, it was on Premier Han Su's desk. Su sat in her office alone. She put on headphones and listened to the entire recording. She heard Songhai begging for help. She heard Vrexian officers laughing and making bets. She heard children crying in the background while aliens found their terror amusing. She listened to it 3 times. Then she sat in silence for a long while, her hands folded on her desk. General Jin entered without knocking. He had heard the recording too. He said nothing, just stood there waiting. After what felt like forever, Su opened her eyes. Her face was calm, but something in her expression had changed. Something fundamental had broken and reformed into something harder. "Convene the assembly," she said quietly. Emergency session. All representatives. No exceptions. Yes, Premier, Jin said. And General? Su looked up at him. Tell Ambassador Tay to come home. Tell all of our ambassadors to return from alien space immediately. Every single one of them. Jin understood what that meant. In 200 years, humanity had never recalled all their ambassadors at once. It was the signal that came before only one thing. It will be done, he said, and his voice held something that had not been there before. Hope? Perhaps. Or satisfaction, or the grim determination of someone who had waited far too long for this moment. The line had finally been crossed. The emergency session of Earth's Parliament was called at midnight. Representatives arrived from all over the planet, some still in casual clothes, all of them sensing that something major was happening. The recall of every human ambassador had sent shockwaves through the government. Such a thing had never been done before. Premier Han Su stood at the central podium, waiting for everyone to take their seats. General Kim Jin stood beside her, a large screen behind them both. When the chamber finally quieted, Su spoke. 200 years ago, humanity took its first steps into the galaxy, she began. We went with hope. We believed we would find friends, partners, fellow civilizations that would welcome us. We were wrong, she nodded to Jin. The screen lit up with data. Columns of numbers, dates, locations. For 200 years, we have kept records. Every insult, every attack, every crime committed against human beings by other species. The numbers were staggering. 847 unprovoked attacks on human vessels, 12,000 human deaths. 23 colonies sabotaged or damaged, thousands of smaller incidents of harassment, theft, and violence. All documented, all reported. All ignored by the Galactic Council. Representative Bae Hyun stood up. He was an older man who had always argued for peace. Premier, surely we can still find a diplomatic solution. War will cost us dearly. Millions could die. Before Su could respond, Ambassador Kang Tae stepped forward. He had arrived on Earth just hours ago, after 15 years on the Council. His face looked older than his years, worn down by endless humiliation and mockery. Representative Hyun, I respect your position, Tae said, his voice steady. I have spent my entire adult life pursuing diplomacy. I have filed 537 formal complaints with the Galactic Council. Do you know how many were acted upon? 0. Not one. He walked to the center of the chamber so everyone could see him. They mistake our patience for weakness. They use our mercy as permission to abuse us. Every day we do not respond. They grow bolder. Every insult we ignore becomes proof that they can do worse. How many more must die before we defend ourselves? The chamber fell silent. Tae had been the voice of diplomacy for years. If even he was calling for action, the situation was truly beyond repair. General Jin activated another screen. This one showed the recording from Terran 4. He did not warn anyone. He just played it. The assembled representatives heard Song Hee's desperate pleas. They heard Vrexian officers laughing. They heard the bets on how many humans would die. They heard children crying. When it ended, several representatives were crying. Others sat in shocked silence. The chamber had never been so quiet. The vote is called, Su announced. A formal declaration of war against the Vrexian Empire and any Galactic Council member that has committed documented acts of aggression against humanity. All in favor? The voting board lit up. Green lights appeared across the display, one after another. When the counting finished, the result was overwhelming. 91% in favor. War was declared. Su took a deep breath. General Jin, you now have full authorization to proceed with military operations. Representative Tae, you will coordinate diplomatic communications with species that remain neutral. Everyone else, you know your duties. We meet again in 6 hours for operational briefings. 1 hour later, Su addressed the galaxy. The transmission was sent via quantum communication to every inhabited system. She stood alone before the camera. wearing simple, dark clothes with no decorations. She looked directly into the lens and spoke clearly. To the members of the Galactic Council and all spacefaring civilizations, she began. For 200 years, humanity has sought peace. We came to the stars with open hands. We followed every law. We respected every border. We endured every insult. We filed every proper complaint. We believed that patience and good faith would be rewarded. She paused and her expression hardened. We were wrong. You taught us that patience is seen as weakness. That following the rules means nothing when others refuse to do the same. That mercy is treated as permission to cause greater harm. Behind her, screens showed the documented evidence. The attacks. The deaths. The laughter of those who found human suffering entertaining. Today, humanity ends its long patience, Sue continued. We formally declare war on the Vrexian Empire and any other species that has committed acts of aggression against human civilians or military personnel. We have provided 2 centuries of opportunities for peace. You chose violence instead. Very well. You will now face the consequences of your choice. Her voice remained calm, but there was steel in it now. We do not seek conquest. We do not want territory. We want one thing only. For you to understand that humanity will not be abused anymore. We will defend ourselves. We will respond to aggression with force, and we will not stop until those who harmed us face justice. She leaned forward slightly. May whatever gods you worship have mercy on you, because we will have none. The transmission ended. Across the galaxy, billions of beings watched in shock. Many laughed. Humanity declaring war? The weak species that never fought back? It was ridiculous. On the Vrexian homeworld, Admiral Vrektal addressed his fleet commanders. The humans bark at last, he said with amusement. How entertaining. Ready the armada. We will crush this rebellion before they realize how foolish they have been. They have no idea what real war looks like, his officers agreed eagerly. The Vrexian Empire had fought and won thousands of conflicts. Their military was the strongest in the galaxy. What could humans possibly do? On Earth, General Jin activated Protocol Nightfall. It was a plan that had been developed over decades, refined and updated constantly, waiting for the day it might be needed. Military installations that appeared civilian suddenly revealed their true purpose. Shipyards that claimed to build cargo vessels opened bays containing warships. Defensive satellites powered up weapon systems. Humanity had been preparing. Every year of patience had also been a year of planning. They had studied their enemies. They had learned every tactic. They had designed weapons but never built them, keeping the designs secret. Now those weapons began rolling off assembly lines. Captain Li Huan received new orders. He was promoted to Commodore and given command of a fleet. His cargo ship days were over. When he saw the vessels he would command, he stood in shocked silence. These were not defensive patrol ships. These were warships designed for one purpose: to destroy enemy fleets. His old crew came with him. Navigator Park Yuna took her position on the flagship's bridge. Engineer Choi Dae went below to work with weapons he had only seen in classified files. They were scared, but they were also angry. They remembered every insult, every time they had been forced to stand down while being attacked. Captain Yoon Woo stood in the shipyard, looking at the repaired Defiant. It no longer looked like a patrol ship. It had been upgraded, armed with weapons that should not exist. Seo Rin walked beside him, running through technical specifications. These antimatter torpedoes, she said quietly. These weapons were designed specifically for war. We built them, hoping we would never need them. And now we do, Wu replied. Are you ready? Rin looked at the ship that had nearly died saving Terran 4. I hope they are watching, she said. All those species that laughed at us. I hope they see what happens when you push peaceful people too far. Across human space, civilians were evacuated from frontier colonies. Children were sent to safer systems. Cities prepared for possible attack. But there was no panic. Humanity had known this day might come. They were ready. In his quarters, Ambassador Tay recorded a message to his counterparts among the neutral species. "We do not ask you to join us," he said. "We only ask that you remember who started this. Remember who had 200 years to choose peace. Remember who laughed at the suffering of innocence. And remember who finally said enough." The galaxy was about to learn a hard lesson. Patience is not weakness. It is restraint. And when restraint finally breaks, the result is not chaos. It is focused, controlled, devastating force applied with the precision of those who have spent centuries learning exactly how and where to strike. The Vrexian armada assembled near the New Haven system. 500 warships, the largest fleet the Empire had gathered in decades. Admiral Vrektal commanded from his flagship, the Eternal Fist. He was confident. Humans had no real military experience. This would be quick. "Send word to all ships," he ordered. "We attack at dawn. The humans have one small colony here. We will destroy it as an example. Let the galaxy see what happens to those who challenge us." His intelligence reports showed that New Haven had been evacuated. Only a small human fleet remained, maybe 50 ships. The numbers made him laugh. 10-1 odds. This was barely a fight. What Vrektal did not know was that humanity had been preparing for this exact scenario. Every ship in the human fleet had been positioned carefully. Every captain had studied Vrexian tactics for years. They knew how the enemy moved, how they communicated, how they thought. Commodore Li Huan stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Determined. Around him in space floated 49 other human warships. He looked calm, but his heart was racing. This was it, the first real battle. Everything depended on this. "All ships report ready," Navigator Park Yuna said from her station. "Enemy fleet approaching. They are moving in standard Vrexian attack formation. Beta 7. Huan nodded. He had memorized every Vrexian formation. "Good. They are doing exactly what we expected. All ships, prepare to execute. Plan Nightfall 1. Weapons free on my mark." The Vrexian fleet came in confidently. They saw the small human force and assumed quick victory. They moved into their standard attack positions, spreading out to surround the humans. "Now," Huan said quietly. What happened next shocked every military analyst who later studied the battle. The human ships moved with precision that seemed impossible. They accelerated, turned, and fired. In perfect coordination. It was like watching a single organism with 50 bodies. Yuna's hands flew across her controls, coordinating the fleet movements through quantum-linked systems. Every human ship was connected, sharing data instantly. They moved as one mind. The first volley from human ships tore through the Vrexian front line. Railguns fired solid projectiles at impossible speeds, punching through shields that were designed to stop energy weapons. The Vrexians had never seen weapons like these. Their shields were useless. Admiral Vrektal watched in disbelief as 12 of his ships exploded in the first 10 seconds. "Return fire," he screamed. "All ships, return fire." The Vrexian ships fired their plasma cannons and missile batteries. They were powerful weapons that had won countless battles. But the human ships had already moved. They were not where the Vrexians aimed. The shots missed or hit empty space. Engineer Choi Dae worked in the weapons bay of the Determined, managing power distribution. The new systems were incredible. Missiles that could hunt targets on their own. Torpedoes filled with nanites that could tear apart enemy hulls, molecule by molecule. Energy weapons that could overload shield generators. "Target their command ship," Huan ordered. "Focus fire." 20 human ships turned their weapons on the Eternal Fist. Vrektal's shields lit up under the assault. They held for maybe 30 seconds. Then they failed. The next wave of shots hit the hull directly, tearing through armor and into critical systems. Vrektal abandoned his command deck, running for the escape pods. His flagship was dying around him. Across the battlefield, Vrexian ships tried to adapt. They changed formations. They tried to surround individual human vessels. Nothing worked. The humans had studied them too well. Every tactic the Vrexians used, the humans had a counter already prepared. Captain Yun Wu led a squadron of smaller, faster ships. They vanished from Vrexian sensors using stealth technology, then reappeared inside enemy formations. They struck at engines and weapons systems, crippling ships before disappearing again. They cannot track us, Wu reported to Huan. Their sensors are looking for the wrong signatures. We can hit them at will. Engineer Seo Rin managed the power systems on the Defiant, routing energy between weapons, shields, and stealth systems. She had helped design these ships. She knew every circuit and wire. Captain, we can keep this up for hours. They will run out of ships before we run out of ammunition. And they did. The battle lasted 4 hours. In that time, the Vrexian armada lost 300 ships. The human fleet lost 2. The Vrexians finally broke and ran, their formations collapsing into chaos. Pursue, Huan ordered. No mercy. They wanted war. Show them what war means. The human ships chased the fleeing Vrexians. On all communication channels, they broadcast the recording from Terran 4. The laughter of Vrexian officers, the bets on human deaths, the mockery of desperate pleas for help. Vrektal's escape pod was intercepted by Wu's fighter. The admiral screamed threats. Then, please. He offered money, territory, anything to be spared. Wu's response was cold and calm. You had 200 years to stop. You laughed instead. Now you have time to think about every human you killed. He disabled the pod's engines, leaving it drifting in space with enough life support for 3 days. Not enough to die quickly, enough to suffer. News of the battle spread across the galaxy faster than light. Humanity had not just won. They had crushed the Vrexian armada. 500 ships reduced to scattered survivors in 4 hours. On the Galactic Council, panic set in. Species that had attacked human vessels suddenly found human fleets appearing at their borders. Not to invade, not to occupy, just to destroy military assets, every weapons platform, every warship, every military station. Ambassador Na-Un addressed the council from Earth. She appeared on screens in the council chamber, calm and professional. You wondered why humanity delayed declaring war, she said. You thought we were weak. You thought we were afraid. You were wrong. She smiled without humor. We were learning. Every insult you gave us taught us your weaknesses. Every attack showed us your tactics. Every mockery helped us understand your psychology. Thank you for the education. We have learned our lessons well. Species that had remained neutral scrambled to prove they had never harmed humans. Old records were suddenly made public, showing they had opposed actions against humanity. Some of it was even true. General Kim Jin's strategy became clear. Humanity was not trying to conquer territory. They were removing the ability of others to threaten them. Every species that had harmed humans watched their military might being systematically destroyed. The Thrax Collective, which had sabotaged 3 human colonies, found their entire defense fleet gone in a single night. Human ships appeared, destroyed every military vessel, and left. No demands, no occupation, just destruction, and a simple message: this is what you earned. The Kelvin Unity, which had regularly harassed human traders, woke up to find all their weapons platforms in orbit around their homeworld, reduced to debris. The human fleet broadcast one message: you stole from us. We have taken your means to steal from others. Consider yourselves fortunate we stopped there. Across the galaxy, the pattern repeated. Species that had attacked humans lost their military power. Those that had remained neutral were left alone. Those that had actually helped humans received offers of alliance and trade. On the Vrexian homeworld, the government collapsed. The empire that had dominated the galaxy for centuries was broken. Their fleet was scattered. Their allies abandoned them. Their economy crumbled. Ambassador Tay sent them a message, not gloating, not threatening, just factual. Your empire is finished. Not because we destroyed it out of hatred, but because you left us no choice. You could have been our friends. You chose to be our enemies. This is the result. Commodore Juan returned to orbit around New Haven with his fleet intact. The colony below was safe. The civilians could return home. He looked out at his ships, these weapons of war that had proven so devastating. "Stand down to defensive status," he ordered. "Maintain patrols but do not engage unless attacked. The war is not over, but this battle is." Yuna checked the reports from across human space. Everywhere the pattern was the same. Human forces were winning. Not just winning, dominating. 2 centuries of study, preparation, and patience were paying off. Day came up from engineering. "Sir, we have requests from 7 different species asking for peace terms. They are ready to negotiate." "Send them to Ambassador Tay," Juan replied. "We are soldiers. We fight when we must. Others will handle the peace." But even as victories mounted, there was no celebration on human ships. The crews were quiet, professional, focused. They had not wanted this war. They had been forced into it. Every shot fired, every enemy ship destroyed, was a reminder of the peace that could have been. Wu stood in the observation deck of the Defiant, watching stars that had once seemed full of promise. Rin joined him. "They are calling us monsters now," she said. "Some of the neutral species. They say we are too dangerous, too powerful." "Let them," Wu replied. "We did not choose this, but we will finish it. And then we will show them what humanity really wants. Not war, not conquest. Just the right to exist without being victimized." The galaxy was awakening to a new reality. Humanity was not weak. They never had been. They had simply chosen peace over violence. When that choice was no longer possible, they had shown what happens when a patient people are finally pushed to war, and the war was not over yet. 6 months after the first battle at New Haven, the war was effectively over. 12 species had formally surrendered and sued for peace. The Vrexian Empire no longer existed as a unified state, its territory broken into dozens of small, independent systems. The Galactic Council had dissolved in chaos as members turned on each other, desperate to prove they had never supported actions against humanity. Premier Hansu stood before what remained of galactic leadership. They met on a neutral station, not on Earth and not on any alien world. General Kim Jin stood at her side, his uniform carrying new decorations but his expression still serious. Representatives from 40 different species filled the chamber, some defiant, most fearful, a few genuinely apologetic. "We wanted peace," Sue began, her voice carrying through the chamber. "We came to the stars seeking friends, partners, fellow civilizations working together toward common goals. You gave us war instead. You mocked us. You attacked us. You laughed at our suffering. And when we finally defended ourselves, you called us monsters." She paused, letting her words sink in. "We did not become monsters. We became what you forced us to become. We showed you that humanity will protect itself. We showed you that patience has limits. We showed you that mercy, when abused, eventually ends." An alien diplomat stood up, one from a species that had remained neutral. "What do you want from us now?" he asked. "Tribute? Territory? Subjugation?" Sue shook her head. "We want none of those things. We never did." Representative Bei Hyun stepped forward, carrying a data pad. He was older now, worn down by 6 months of war, but his voice was steady. "We propose the Terran Accord, a new framework for relations between species. The rules are simple and absolute." He activated a holographic display. "First, mutual defense. Any attack on one member is treated as an attack on all. Second, fair trade enforced by neutral arbitration. Third, zero tolerance for aggression against civilians of any species. Fourth, respect for sovereignty and borders." "And if someone breaks these rules?" the alien diplomat asked. Ambassador Kang Tae answered. "Then what happened to the Vrexian Empire happens to them. We will not wait 200 years again. We will not file endless complaints. We will not exhaust diplomatic options while our people die. Break faith with us, and we will respond immediately and decisively. The chamber fell silent. The message was clear. Humanity was offering peace, but it was peace backed by proven strength. Join the Accord and be protected. Break its rules and face destruction. You do not have to join, Sue added. Remain independent if you wish. Trade with us or do not. We will not force anyone. But know this. We remember everything. Every species that harmed us. We remember. Every species that stood by and watched, we remember. Every species that helped us, we remember that too. Over the next weeks, species began signing the Terran Accord. Some joined out of fear. Some joined because they genuinely believed in the principles. Some joined because they saw economic opportunity. Humanity did not care about the reasons. They cared about the results. The Accord grew quickly. 20 species in the first month. 50 within 3 months. Species that had ignored human suffering suddenly became enthusiastic about protecting civilian populations. Species that had stolen from human traders suddenly supported fair trade enforcement. Commodore Li Huan received orders to stand down his fleet. The war was over. He could return to civilian life if he wanted. He chose to retire from military service and return to merchant shipping. His old ship, the Sunrise Herald, had been rebuilt and waited for him. Park Yuna and Choi Dae came with him. They stood on the bridge of their old vessel, now upgraded with better engines and proper defensive systems, though nothing like the warships they had commanded. This feels strange, Yuna said, checking navigation routes that no longer required them to fear harassment. Peaceful, normal. Normal is good, Juan replied. Normal means we succeeded. We fought so that others would not have to. Day looked at the trade routes on his display. Human merchant ships now traveled freely. The harassment had stopped. Other species gave them respect, or at least stayed out of their way. It still feels boring after everything we went through. Peace is never boring, Juan said firmly. It is precious. We remember what it cost. Captain Yun Wu chose a different path. He remained in service, now commanding a training academy for the next generation of human defenders. Young officers came to learn from the veterans who had fought in the war. On the first day of class, Wu stood before 100 cadets. You are here to learn how to defend humanity, he told them. But the first lesson is this. We did not want war. We were forced into it. Every shot fired, every enemy destroyed, was something we did because we had no other choice. He showed them the recording from Terran 4, the same recording that had pushed humanity to war. The cadets watched in silence, some crying, all of them angry. You feel anger now, Wu said. Good, remember it. But also remember this. Anger is not why we fight. We fight to protect. We fight to ensure that no human ever has to beg for their life, while others laugh. We fight so that war becomes unnecessary. Engineer Seo Rin taught in the same academy, training the next generation of ship engineers. She showed them the advanced weapons systems, the stealth technology, the quantum-linked coordination networks. These systems won the war, she told her students. They are powerful. They are devastating. And they should frighten you. We built them, hoping we would never need them. When we did need them, they worked perfectly. But their greatest success will be if we never have to use them again. Ax, a young student raised her hand. Teacher, will there be another war? Rin considered the question carefully. There might be. The galaxy has learned that humanity can fight. Whether they have learned not to make us fight, only time will tell. That is why you are here, to be ready if the lesson needs teaching again. Ambassador Na-Un became the first director of the Terran Accord's diplomatic corps. Her office on Earth coordinated with dozens of species, handling disputes, enforcing trade agreements, and investigating possible violations of the Accord's principles. Most of her work was peaceful. Boring, even. Exactly what humanity wanted. But she kept careful records of everything, just as humanity had always done. Every agreement honored. Every agreement broken. Every species that acted in good faith. Every species that tried to cheat, trust but verify. She told her staff. We extend friendship to all. But we document everything. Our patience is restored. But our memory is permanent. Former Premier Han Su retired from politics. She had led humanity through its darkest time and brought them safely to the other side. Now she wanted only to rest. She lived in a small house by the ocean, far from the government centers and military bases. General Kim Jin visited her sometimes. They would sit on her porch, drinking tea and watching the sunset. Do you think it will last? She asked him one evening. The peace. I mean, Jin thought about it. Some species have genuinely changed. They saw what happened to those who opposed us and decided cooperation is better. Some are just afraid. They will test us eventually. And when they do, we will be ready, Jin said simply. We are always ready now. That is the difference. We are not the naive species that went to the stars 200 years ago. We are not the victims who endured abuse for centuries. We are humans who remember both the value of peace and the necessity of strength. Sue nodded and took a sip of her tea. I pray they never force us to war again. So do I, Jin agreed. But if they do, they will not get 200 years to push us around first. Across human space, life returned to normal. Colonies grew. Children went to school. Merchants traded freely. Scientists conducted research. Artists created beauty. All the things that make civilization worthwhile. But in orbit around every human world, defensive stations stood watch. In shipyards, new vessels were built to replace those damaged in the war. In academies, young officers trained. In laboratories, scientists continued developing better systems, better defenses, better ways to protect human lives. Humanity had learned the hard lesson. Peace is wonderful, but only when backed by the ability to defend it. Patience is a virtue, but only when others know it can end. Mercy is important, but only when it is not mistaken for weakness. The galaxy had a new saying now, spreading from species to species, repeated in 100 different languages. Test a human's patience if you wish, but remember, they are counting every insult, learning from every attack, and when they finally move, they move to finish things. Most species heeded the warning. A few did not, and learned the same lesson the Vrexian Empire had learned. But those were small conflicts, quickly resolved. Nothing like the Great War that had changed the galaxy. Ambassador Tay, now older and considering retirement himself, stood before the Accord Council during its 5th anniversary celebration. Representatives from 70 species attended, more than had ever gathered peacefully before. 5 years ago we were at war, he said. Today, we celebrate peace. Not perfect peace, not peace without challenges, but real peace, built on mutual respect and enforced by collective strength. This is what humanity always wanted. We are grateful we finally achieved it, though we wish it had not required war to make it possible. The chamber applauded. Genuine applause from most, polite applause from some, but all of them applauded. That was what mattered. On the Sunrise Herald, Commodore Juan, now back to being Captain Juan, delivered a cargo of grain to a colony that needed it. No one harassed his ship. No one stole his cargo. No one mocked him or his crew. It was boring. It was routine. It was peaceful. It was exactly what they had fought for. Yuna checked their course to the next system. Day monitored the engines, which ran smoothly and required no desperate overclocking. Juan sat in his captain's chair and allowed himself a small smile. Next stop, the Kellar colonies, Yuna announced. They are paying premium for medical supplies. Good, Juan said. Just another day of peaceful trade. Just another routine flight through space that was no longer hostile. Just another reminder that the war had been worth it.